This was my identity.
Nobody talks about how freaking hard it is to be a dentist. What most people talk about is how this affects the patient. What nobody talks about is how this affects us. Dentistry is ready for this. Now is really the time. Welcome back to Wellness in Dentistry. Today we're going to be talking about what happens when you have a challenging day, how to react, how to keep going forward, how not to lose your SHIT and still enjoy your day. So, I am Dr. Kyle Stanley. I'm a dentist, tech entrepreneur, speaker, and researcher, and I'm joined by my good friend and your co-host, Dr. Martin Mendelson. Martin is a disabled dentist, coach, speaker, and author, and his book, One Move Makes All the Difference, is available wherever books are sold. And together, Martin and I have helped thousands of dental professionals pursue wellness in dentistry. And if you want to hang out with us, make sure to come next month in Dallas. We're going to be doing a 2-day course called Lightside Live. You could see all the links in the show notes, and that has all the information. We'd love to hang out with you, and you get CE credits. Come on, what are you missing out on? So, Martin, how are you doing?
I am good. I am good. I'm looking forward to talking about this because, we all can relate to this challenge. I don't even care what it is you do for a living. It's a humanistic experience, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah.
I had a little bit of this happen last night.
Yep.
Last night I was in Miami. I was there for a business meeting, and we're getting on the plane, and we're like the second to last flight out of Miami, going back to
Hmm.
LA. And we're getting on the plane, and as we're on the plane, they're saying, there's something happening with the plane. We may be a few minutes late, but it looks like it's just a paperwork thing. It should be pretty quick. And then it turned into, well, they're doing some maintenance on the plane, and please just stay seated, and we'll be pulling out of here pretty soon. And eventually we're there sitting at the gate for an hour and 15 minutes, and finally they say whatever, what nobody wants to hear, but
Yeah.
the pilot comes on and says, "Hey everybody, really sorry to tell you this, but they are taking this plane out of commission right
Yep.
now, and we are trying to get another aircraft. So we need everybody to deplane, make sure you grab all your stuff, and the gate agents will help you figure out when we're getting another plane or if there's other options." And as you can imagine, people are concerned.
Yeah.
I heard people that were worried they're not going to make their connecting flight. Some people were going to South Africa or something.
Yeah.
I heard others saying that they have a cruise the next morning that they're leaving on, family events. So, of course, everybody's concerned.
Yeah.
But so there's kind of like this uproar, and oh my gosh, everyone's grabbing their stuff and taking off. And there's a lot of like hemming and hawing about like, oh, well, of course, it was American Airlines. Oh, of course, American Airlines. Oh my gosh, there's always a problem. And
I have to say, isn't it funny? Like in the moment, everybody gripes about the airline itself, and it's just like
it's never
they
the
don't want to,
airlines.
they don't want to be late any more than you do. In
No,
fact, they want to be
no.
late less than you do, actually. But
Yes,
anyway, sorry for
exactly. Yeah, they lose
interrupting.
money on this. So I'm kind of like, oh, well, I hope I make it home tonight.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking out, and I'm walking out of the plane, and I'm literally thinking, what should I do right now? How could I control my emotions right now? I thought of you, of course, who originally taught me this idea of living between the stimulus and the response. And the
Yeah.
stimulus was already there. I was then going to choose my response. And my response was not going to be complaining,
Yep.
not going to be hemming and hawing and talking with the other passengers and saying, oh my gosh, can you believe this? They're so unorganized. How could they miss this? At first, actually, I was pretty grateful. And I said,
Mm.
thank goodness they found this before we took off.
Yeah, totally.
I don't want to be in a
Yeah.
plane that needs maintenance issues.
Yeah,
So like
exactly.
a Final Destination movie, right? I don't want to be in that. And so we go out and I sit down and there's this big line forming at the gate. Hundreds of people now. Everybody from the plane is
Mhm.
trying to figure out, oh, when's the next thing? And I have these connections, and when are we going to get another one? Is there another opportunity? And I thought about it and I thought of Stephen Covey's circle of influence, which is let's not focus on what you can't control. Let's
Yep.
focus on what you can control. And
Yep.
I literally had this thought in my head. Stephen Covey, my slide that I show came up. I'm thinking about it and I go, okay, I can't control that the flight isn't working. I can't control that I'm going to be home late. What can I control? Number one, I can control my emotions. So I
Hmm.
did like just a few like deep breaths. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. I got my emotions down. Number two, what can I do? I can control my actions. And
Hmm.
so I said, okay, everybody's in line. I don't want to get in the back of that line. There's 100 people in line. Let me go to the American Airlines app and
Yeah.
see what I can do. And I saw that there was a later flight. So I first just searched and said, oh my gosh, there's a later flight. So I went to the chat and you
Hmm.
can chat with people and they respond very fast.
Yeah.
Within, honestly, 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, I was booked on another flight.
Yeah.
Now I had to go to another terminal, another gate. I had to move quickly, but I got on, I got home. And
Yeah.
it's like this whole idea that in dentistry, we're going to have problems.
Yep.
Patients are going to show up late, provisionals are going to come off, the shade's not going to be incorrect. But how do we let it not destroy our day? And I learned so
Yeah.
much of this review, so I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts.
No, I think it's fantastic, and you're right. Like, and truthfully, there's some science behind this too. So I don't know if you remember Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory that positive thought action repertoires, quote unquote, enable us to broaden our ability to think and then solve problems and see opportunities. So you saw a line, and you're like, okay, what other way can I handle this? Oh, I have an app, right? And if
Yeah,
you hadn't gotten through on the app, you probably would have called, right? And
yeah,
so the ability to stay kind of above the fray neurologically actually works in your favor. And so there's a fine line here too, though, right? Because the way I was trained relative to happiness studies is that, and this is a nuance, but it's important. We're not ignoring those negative emotions. We're allowing them to flow through and flow past us. So
I love that visual, by the
yeah,
way. That visual of like they're still there, but
yeah,
they're gonna come by me like a rock in the river, right? The river's not gonna
yeah,
just slam through me. It's gonna roll around me.
yeah,
Or wind. I'm thinking kind of wind and aerodynamics of
yeah,
cars, and like
yeah,
that thing coming where they're coming and they're coming
yeah.
past you.
And you basically said so much, right? Because you said, you hear the words you didn't want to hear, and of course that sucks. And so, but then kind of flowed through it. And granted, also, I want everybody to also remember the power of the stimulus is important here. Because this was an inconvenience and not a great one, but by the same token, it was also not a patient calling to sue you or something.
Exactly. It wasn't
You know,
catastrophic. Yeah.
yeah. So, but by the same token, I see this all the time. I see it in myself. I see it in my friendship with you. I see it with my coaching clients. The opportunity to choose what you focus on, I think is the take home message here because you could have chosen to focus on the frustrating elements of your story, or you could choose to focus on, okay, what can I control? How can I get out of this? And so let's say even you're having a bad day and a hygienist calls out sick and an assistant calls out sick and then the first patient is just an asshole and and you're like, I'm having a bad day. It's like, well, it's not a great day. Let's call it
Right.
what it is. But are you? And what other things can we choose to focus on to bring ourselves out of the funk so that we can actually leverage the neuroscience and in particular, as I've already mentioned, the broaden and build theory to allow us to just think about things differently. And so
Yeah.
it sounds simple, but it ain't that easy. It takes practice. It takes practice.
Yeah, and I feel like my wife and I are in a really good position now in that we help each other in this positive thinking.
Yeah,
So like if I'm being negative about something, she'll be like, "Well, Kyle, we're pretty lucky to have this and this, and
exactly.
we have this that isn't going to cause us a problem." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're
Yeah,
right." Like I was being negative. So having that support from people
yeah,
around you too, like you and I have this really,
yeah,
really well with our friendship is
yeah,
if I'm feeling down, you can kind of remind me if you're feeling down, I
yep,
can kind of remind you, and we keep each other
yep.
accountable. The other thing I wanted to say is that this experience with my flight wasn't catastrophic, like you said.
No,
However, what I would say is It's so much better to practice on the non-catastrophic ones
Oh
so that
yeah.
when the catastrophic ones come, that's not your first rodeo. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I'll give you another one. I didn't even tell you this yet. So yesterday, Michael goes out in the backyard. He's actually traveling to a Doctor Who convention this weekend.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
he went out to get his suitcase. We have a shed that's air conditioned because for those who don't know, I live in Phoenix. So if you store your luggage out in the 115, you're gonna ruin
That's
it. But
crazy.
anyway,
Air conditioned.
so on the way he checked the hot tub and he's like, "Oh crap, it's not on." Then he couldn't even lift the lid.
Mm,
And so, at first I'm like, damn it, another repair, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, no, no. How lucky are you to have a hot tub? How lucky are
right.
you to be able to afford to? And so what it ended up being in terms of the lid was in the Arizona sun, the lid cracked, and we actually had a lot of rain relatively recently. It
Oh, so it
was
got
just
heavy?
waterlogged,
Yeah.
believe it or not. And so we were able to lift it together. The hot tub's still broken. They're coming next Monday.
Hmm.
But it was another example. I mean, think about it. It was a in the grand scheme of things a minor inconvenience.
Yeah.
Like think about something in your office, folks, that isn't working. And in
Yes.
the grand scheme of things, is this really going to matter in a week?
Right.
Seriously? So, but to your point, and this is why I bring it up, where you just said practice on the things that aren't as consequential, it creates thought patterns for you to be able to handle those things differently. It's kind of like coaching yourself internally 101
Hmm.
because as a trained coach we're taught how to have people like have these breakthrough moments relative to, okay, so what's another time where things did go well? Why did they go well? What did you use to facilitate them going well? How can we use that thought process or action today to bring ourselves forward in this different and challenging situation? So these thought process things are really important to do. So
The other thing I want people to understand too is to really look at these situations with a fine-tooth comb, meaning what I was talking about at the beginning during my story is this out of my control
yeah.
or is this in my control? And a lot of people may look at the hygienist being late and
Hmm.
say that's out of my control. And then
Yeah.
you could argue it either way. But
Yeah.
there's things that you can control within that situation.
Yeah.
So, did you set the expectation for him or her on when they're supposed to show up?
Right.
Are there boundaries set? Are there consequences that they know of? Do you have quarterly reviews with them?
Yep.
Those are things you can control. Also, how you communicate.
Absolutely.
Let's say you did all those things, but they weren't really communicated well.
Amen. I work on this every day. I mean, I used to have a team of over 20 people, or let me rephrase, in my career, I've had teams upwards of 25 people.
Yeah.
And, today it's a team of one. I have a virtual assistant. He's based outside the US. He is incredible. He is absolutely incredible. And you know what we're talking about later today? Scorecards. What is he going to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, and ad hoc basis? Why? Because of communication. How do we communicate in terms of tasks? We use a project management software called ClickUp. Why?
Hmm.
So that it actually forces me to be very communicative. So I'll create a task. Let's say it's a email blast, but let's say it's an email blast about my book and we want to focus on testimonials or we want to focus on shameless plug. You can get 4 hours of CE for reading my book. But there are other subtask elements that go into the launching of that email blast. So what are they? So it forces me to be communicative, which selfishly also informs my teaching on leadership. But it's been a really great learning experience for me relative to tamping down on the assumption. Like, well, he
That's a
knows
big
that we need to
problem.
do that. Does
That's a big
he?
problem I see with dentists is
Oh, big
they
time.
say, but I told them about this.
Yes.
Right, but there's so much nuance in that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you create the psychological safety like you talked
Yeah.
about? Did you make them feel safe to ask questions?
Yeah.
Was it written where they could read it? You know, like
Yeah.
there's so many nuances to I told them how to do this or what to do and now they're not doing it. And it could be true or not, but you really have to look back on yourself and say, did
Oh,
I do this to
100%.
the highest standard? And if
Yeah.
you didn't, learn how to do it to the highest standard.
And I think the biggest challenge that I see in my clients over and over and over again is they'll make the statement, and I respect them for making this statement. So this is not a judgment. So what I hear is you just can't teach this stuff to these people, quote unquote. Like,
Mhm.
why would they do that? Shouldn't they just know that innately, blah, 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 blah. And my first reaction to them, or even if I think about it, is should they? Like, really? Like, who made that rule? And how have we communicated that? What have we communicated? But see, here's the flip side. I can see people, our listeners saying, Martin, come on, man. You can't literally describe every situation. That's correct, right? And there are many times when we have the wrong people on the bus. It is what it is.
Right.
However, at the same time, we also need to be honest with ourselves that we're sitting on the right seat in the bus from a leadership perspective. How have we communicated? What have we communicated? And what methods have we communicated? All those kind of things. And if we can honestly look ourselves in the mirror and said, I did the best job I can, then, you have a couple different options. I mean, one of which is to say to this individual, listen, we've talked about this a couple times. We, documented this a couple times. This still isn't happening. What am I missing?
Yeah.
Like you could turn it to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me if I have not communicated something to you, if you have
Right.
questions about this task.
Right.
Hmm.
You know what's a DEF CON 1 statement too is something to the effect of, listen, we talked about how important this is. We've met about it, documented, blah, 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 blah. And three occasions this week it didn't happen. If you were me as the owner of this practice that this feels really important to, what would you do?
I love that. Yep.
That's really powerful because it puts it all back on them because what you're going to hear most likely is either complete backing down
Hmm.
or they're going to do the opposite, which is going to tell you everything you need to know,
Right.
right?
So
Usually.
when these challenging things happen in your day, a patient's late,
Yeah.
they don't accept their treatment, or
Yeah.
all the you guys know all these
Yeah. Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah.
We need to have I think the re, what is the word I'm looking for? The reaction. What is like a reaction that's like automatic? Something I'm thinking
Like
of.
an autonomic reaction.
Yeah, but like I don't know. Anyways, but your reaction first needs to be thinking in your own head
Yeah.
how you're responding,
Mm,
and then looking at it from almost like a devil's advocate way of thinking about it, right?
hmm.
What's actually happening? Is this something I can control?
Right.
If I can control this, what are the things that I can control? And kind of go through this decision-making process and then
Right.
move forward. Because if you don't, you go through your team framework and your thoughts
Mhm.
lead to your emotions, lead to your actions and manifest your results. And all of a sudden, you're manifesting results that you didn't want to manifest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think the other question we could ask ourselves is, how does my emotional reaction match the situation?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Is it too much, too little,
Appropriate.
just
Yeah.
right? It's the good. Never thought of it this way before. It's the
Goldilocks.
Goldilocks question, right? So maybe I should call it that from now on.
Oh gosh, I look back at some situations where I was, blowing down the entire house. I guess that's the Three Little Pigs, not Goldilocks. But anyways,
Mhm.
I was overreacting for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And I think a lot of that for me was, of course, I hadn't gone through this personal growth journey. I didn't really understand my emotions.
yeah,
I didn't know myself well.
yeah,
But also too, I just wasn't showing up ready to to be able to think like that. So
yeah,
physically, I wasn't sleeping, I
yeah.
wasn't eating well, I wasn't taking care of myself. And so that just put me behind the eight ball to always be that reactive person.
So I want to share something that I've actually not shared publicly before, and I'm gonna be careful to be respectful, but I think it's important and I want to share it. So you've heard this story before.
Okay.
I knew that I was changing when I had something happen that I'll describe that was very emotionally charged. So I was working with someone, this was years ago, who was a superior to me, who was a demanding individual. And I was asked at 4 o'clock on a Friday to stay late. And I said, I can't stay late. I have a friend coming in from out of town, which is true. We have not only dinner reservations, but show tickets.
Mm.
I said, happy to meet over the weekend. Well, the response I got was, I'm always accommodating your schedule, among other things that I won't repeat. And there was another individual in the room, and I paused and I thought to myself, okay, I have a choice. And to be fair, I wanted to model my behavior for this other individual
Mhm.
who was a subordinate to me.
Oh, okay.
And I looked at this person and I said, um, I want you to know that your statement is very upsetting to me. I have rearranged my schedule at this time with this occurrence, this occurrence, this occurrence. I didn't say no. I said no for this evening because I have plans. What about meeting on Sunday is a problem for you?
Yeah.
Person completely backed down and apologized, which was not in their
Really?
typical modus operandi. I share this story because the old Martin would have immediately I what I would have done is what I often say, and I'm glad I actually brought this up because it'll enable us to illustrate a point. You know how I say so many times, inaction is action?
Yeah.
So I would have made a choice I wouldn't have stayed late because I couldn't. I mean, nor would I have wanted to. But I would have just like acquiesced. I wouldn't have said much. I wouldn't have stood up for myself. I wouldn't have modeled behavior. That was a choice I made.
Yeah.
And those actions manifested a different result. So my point here is, you're making progress when the minor inconveniences that you've worked through, like my hot tub example, manifest themselves in being able to work through really charged situations because you've switched your default,
So
right?
you before this situation, you must have already been on your personal growth journey.
Yeah, I was. I was.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah.
to stop in a charged time like that and have that, I would say, mature
Yeah.
response
Yeah.
takes a lot of work and
Yeah.
practice.
Well, particularly given the situation and some other factors I won't describe, but yeah, it took balls to to stand up and do what I do, say what I said, and with conviction, I was like, nope, not happening. So yeah,
It's great. Well,
yeah,
I hope you guys like this episode. I think this is an important topic. Martin and I have practiced this stuff for a long time. Are we perfect? No. But are we a
no.
lot better than we were years and years ago? Yeah, we are, for sure.
And and our friends and loved ones have pointed it out to both of us on numerous occasions, right?
So
So
true.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
true. Yeah.
that's when you know you're changing, when your
Yes.
friends and loved ones are like, "Wow, that was pretty cool."
Yeah. And if you want to hang out with us more, come hang out with us April 10th and 11th. We're going to be at MB2's new campus in Dallas. We've got our 2-day transformational CE course called Lightside Live. If you're not a part of MB2, you can still join if you're a part of Carabelli Club. Carabelli Club is the buying group that my practice is a part of. And we are going to save around 20 grand this year by paying,
Ooh.
I don't know what we paid, like 1,600 bucks or something. So if you want to save 20 grand for paying $1,600, I would do that deal all day. All the links are in our show notes, and we'd love to see you guys there. And we'll see you on the next episode of Wellness and Dentistry. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.